How's it going, guys? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome to Chaos Head. So, I had to buckle. I had to look at a spoiler-free guide. Based on now understanding the mechanics, I feel like it was inevitable. Basically, you get the opportunities. I wasn't wrong that like there are certain trigger delusions that'll happen. They're like the yes/no sequence. And I should have been primed for it because in the yes/no sequence that we see in the core game, where he's like on top of the big billboard, and he's trying and like it's asking you like, can you see the sword? And like you have to answer the questions correctly, like yes, no, like yes, yes, no, no, yes. I think, and if you don't get it right, you just get a bad ending. That should have primed me because the second time you go through the game, you'll have an interaction, usually the first interaction with a character, and you'll get a similar sequence of yes and no questions. I assumed that it was going to be like a point-based system, like most visual novels, where it kind of came down to like the most accurate of the sequences you went through would be the path you would go down next. However, it looks like it's not the case. You have to have a specific combination, or else you don't go down the path. So, yeah, that's it's a bit harsher. I imagine, on hindsight, I think I mentioned it last episode too, but like it definitely kind of clicked for me that visual novels are made for people who like visual novels. And that sounds silly to say it, but it's reality where it seems like a very like unintuitive system. But I think it was designed for people who had already gotten used to the more intuitive systems of visual novels, and the idea was to make something interesting and dynamic. I think that took it a bit too far. But I also imagine it was a lot more fun of a game to like have conspiracies and conversations online about. So it kind of played into the what was it? Not perpetually online. The just people who are online way too much or spending most of their social life online. It was leaning more towards that crowd, where they probably made a main character that they could somewhat relate to, or at least I think that was the approach they were going for, and they also made a game that was more like a puzzle and less more of just like a standard story. A fair story still, but... And again, also, I guess like the other routes and things were things that were added later. So I think the core game, it probably only had the one or two endings, really. So it's just interesting. It's interesting to me to think about it, but... At that same hand, I can kind of see the appeal of making it almost not ARG, it's not augmented reality per se, but I imagine it took a lot of coordination for people to figure out like the different routes, and that's really interesting. There's a lot of other things around that time period, like the early thousands for visual novels. I mean, Muv-Luve's a good example too. When they pitched Muv-Luve Extra, they only pitched and advertised the slice of life part of the game. When they first gave it to fans, people played it and they played through the first half, which was like, well, they played through the whole game, but once they got through two of the endings at least, it would unlock an entirely bonus game, like another half of that game with so much content about the unlimited world. And just the idea that they never even talked about Muv-Luve in that light, where that was completely something that they wanted their fans to discover, was really cool. And I think that that's the motivation is very similar here. I feel like they did a much better job of doing branching paths for Steins Gate. I'm guessing they learned some lessons, they took some notes, but Steins Gate has one of the best interaction systems I've ever seen for a story branching game. And I wish more series would kind of emulate it, because the idea was that you were given a clear choice, but the character, the person who's playing the game, had to physically make the difficult choice. And the easy choice was to get off on a alternate ending. And the difficult choice was the one that progressed you towards the actual end of the story, because that made me feel more invested in the thing as went on. I remember even as it goes, they did such a brilliant job of every decision being harder and harder and harder than the last. But you also kind of got that what's it called when you invest too much into it and you start Gosh darn it. My brain is not working. It's where you get so deep into it that you feel like you have to keep going because otherwise all your investment would be wasted. Gosh darn it. I can't remember that. You probably know what I mean. The whole idea though is that all the previous sacrifices you made would be invalidated if you just ignored the next sacrifice despite how terrible that sacrifice became. And it was such a cool delivery. Anyway, enough rambling about that. I'm sorry. And again, I don't know why I'm talking so much because apparently my brain is half off. I don't know why. I feel fine, but for some reason I'm just like struggling here. So hopefully I'll be a bit more together as we continue on. But here's what we're going to do. Basically, we're pursuing the last of the few checkpoints needed to get to this specific ending. I think we have enough because you only need like 10. I'm pretty sure we've got more than 10, but just to be safe, I'm going to keep following the guide, getting the specific paths. And there are paths I'm choosing that I'm not necessarily showing if we've already viewed them. So like if you want to know exactly how I got where I got for some reason, check the spoiler-free guide. There's links to one on Steam, and I think there's also just a forum post for it's the community that does the mod that helped fix the game. Gosh darn it. The Council of Zero, maybe, I think it was called. Anyway, enough about that. I'm sorry about my brain. I don't know, maybe I'm just not getting enough sleep. We got a lot going on over here. Not bad stuff. Recently, we actually are helping rescue a cat. Found a stray, needed some medical attention, so we got it checked out, and we're trying to decide what we're going to do with it next. But the most important thing is that, despite the fact that I didn't get much sleep the last 2 days, he seems healthy, and I think that he's on a good path towards having a good home. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Anyway, let's get back to it. We are at the beginning of chapter 7. So we're going to be jumping right in here. I'll hit the skip button and we'll just kind of cruise along. All right, so this is one. I can't remember if we've seen this one or not. Regardless, why have I been brought here? We need to be negative. Yeah, okay, we did see that one, but it was, again, whose eyes are those eyes seen? That seems to be the theme here, is we have to see as many of the whose eyes are those eyes delusions, positive or negative. That's kind of what the theme of it is, which would be like the way you'd access whatever this ending is. Okay. So in this one, there was a choice about like how he went to school and everyone was ignoring us. And I guess I didn't do the neutral, which is what I kind of tend to do. If it doesn't tell me to do a positive or negative, I just tend to stick to the neutral one. So this is where he goes to school and everyone's like laughing at him. Misumi like doesn't talk to him. And he's just feeling really out of it. I killed all the DQN bees in my head in an attempt to relieve my anger, but that wasn't going to reverse the humiliation. And not only that, but the DQNs from earlier were still harassing me, their obnoxious voices echoing through the classroom. I mean, I think part of it is the influence of the Noah. Like, it's definitely like kicking up emotions because heightened emotional states helps create the delusions it's using. But at the same time, it's kind of insane that these people are just casually like asking for him to die, offering to help. Like, that's really gross. I covered my ears and tried desperately to put up with it. I wanted to kill them. I wanted to tear every last one of them to shreds with my D-sword. I imagined a sword cracking their skulls open, gouging out their hearts and ripping their bodies in half. Die. 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 Didn't have a D-sword, but I could buy a long kitchen knife anywhere. Wanted to crush these maggots with my own 2 hands. Yeah, this is how, like, school shooters start. That's really terrifying. There, now we're back to normal. It's Kozapi! About 5 minutes. I don't think we're doing a delusion here. Yeah, so let's keep going. Let's see what this is. I'm pretty sure I did a delusion here last time. Yep. Maybe I've gotten so overwhelmed lately I need to create a new personality inside my head just so I could cope with everything. Or is you right, and I really do have multiple personalities. Kozupi's her own Kozupi.
日常君とは違う人だよ。
Like, I definitely think she's interesting. She's probably the most fascinating and most terrifying of the characters. I definitely have yeah, she's definitely like I don't think she's my favorite of the characters, but she's definitely the one I'm one of the most interested in learning more about. I've heard that people with multiple personalities can't have conversations between personalities, but maybe this is an exception?
コズピーは違うの。
I was getting really fed up with this voice. I wonder how I'm gonna be able to stand just this annoying Kozupi personality, let alone all the other ones. Besides, how many personalities do I have inside me in the first place? I read some book somewhere that there are patients in the US that manage 24 personalities. And on top of that, I'm not even sure if the personality I know as me is the main one. Maybe the original personality that owns Nishijo Takumi's body isn't actually me. As I stood there, frozen and dumbfounded, the transfer student poked my shoulder with her finger. When she poked me, she tried to mumble something, but I hadn't ended up saying anything, so instead of speaking, she decided to timidly raise her hand.
コズピーがコズピーなのだ。
I know it's silly, but like I almost feel like at this point the best thing she could do would be like, here, watch this. I'm holding up 5 fingers, now 3, now 2, now 5, and like show that to be like, hey, this is me, like talking to you.
コズピーがコズピーなの。それとコズピーは転校生じゃなくて折原梢なのだ。
Orihara Kozuha. Orihara Kozuha. I faintly remember hearing that name from Missy Makun a long time ago. Kozupi. No. Does this mean that this voice I'm hearing is one you're sending to my head? The transfer student nodded her head emphatically.
テレパシー。
仕組みはよくわかんないのだ。
She's like, I have no idea.
でもできるの。
That's ridiculous. Bro, do you remember what's happened in the last few days? Like I said this at the time, we're looking ridiculous in the rearview mirror. We passed it about 100 miles back. There we go. Alright, so again, she pulls out the D sword, and I think I've actually done both the illusions here. I think I did a positive one time and negative the other time, so now we're doing the only one I haven't done to this scene, which is neutral. It was way too big to be strung around like that indoors. There were other customers around. If anyone were to get hurt, I'd be a total disaster. Kozupi's behavior was making me really nervous. I wasn't sure if that was because she knew I was afraid, but Kozupi recklessly lowered her sword and spun it around the spot. She looked like she was having fun.
これがコズピーの剣だよ。悪い人をやっつけるのだ。
Beat up and down the baddies. Beat up and down the baddies. Those words made me feel uneasy. Something bothered me about them.
よかったらどうぞ。
Okay, so here's the other one. So we need the negative. I think I've definitely done the negative one before. I don't think it's that bad, but yeah, we'll do the negative. Oh yeah, I remember it actually, because yeah, I remember it's all the whose eyes are those eyes one. That's the thing, is that like we offer it. She's like, I don't need it. I got one that's even better. And she hands us the stick. It says whose eyes are those eyes on it. All right, Rimi being at her house.
おっと、ここまで行ったのになおも無視しますか。
Oh, I can't remember why we were upset at Rimi. Is that because she just wasn't around for a while? I sensed Rimi shooting off the couch and onto her feet. She then came up next to me and slowly picked up the toy D-sword leaning against the table. Ignoring my confusion, she held up the upper part of the sword and assumed a stance.
そんなタクにはこうだ。
Dude, what? She swung the sword down. She was obviously just messing around and wasn't actually trying to hurt me, but regardless, she jabbed me in the back with the tip of the sword. She's being such a goofball. But remember, this is also post, like, we saw her with a D-sword Ribby. Next, she bonked me on the head, and when I tried to wave her off in annoyance, she deftly dodged my counter.
ねえねえ、もっと楽しいことしようよ。じゃないと本気で切っちゃうぞ。
楽しいことって。
Mid-dialogue slash aimed straight at my neck, Rimi stopped to ponder a little.
じゃあ、ゲームとか。ほら、タクは得意でしょ？対戦ゲームしようよ。私、そういうのやったことないから、いろいろ教えてほしいな。
That's kind of sweet that she's offering. I don't know what he'd even try, though. He might not even have a good game that would do that, especially at one computer. Unfortunately, the only games I had were ESO and the catalog of Eroge, neither of which had versus mode.
無理だよ。ソフトがなくて。
I grabbed the tip of the sword and pushed it aside. Dissatisfied, Rimi pursed her lips into a pout, then put the sword back where she found it.
だって、せっかく久しぶりに会えたのに。
Okay, and I'm happy to hear that you want to spend time with me, but I'm just not in the mood to do something fun right now, not with everything going on.
メールだよ。ボケなす。
Oh, yes. He's like, oh!
今の何？
いや。
Wait a second. Rimi just heard my Sierra notification tone? Oh, how embarrassing. I feel like we've definitely read this before. There we go. Alright, the hospital room had an area around 10 square meters. We're doing the neutral one here again, so let's see where it goes. Right? Okay, that makes sense. I forgot about that one, but I think I saw that one naturally on my first playthrough. Okay, so I made a bit of a mistake. When Rimi I was just saying how when Rimi was in our room playing with the fake sword, like we'd seen her with the D sword. We hadn't. I've been misremembering because I replayed the game so recently. So that's out of order. We're about to see that scene, but this is the other scene we need to do. We need to do it negative for another whose eyes are those eyes, and then we are moving on to the next chapter. He went to go right past me, but just before he did, he put his hand on my shoulder. So this is like where we go into Ayase's room. Ayase's there, is there. She starts talking about the Gao Gadu, the D swords, the knights, the wicked-hearted king. And so so Mitsubikun's like, maybe we should just go. He went to go right past me, but just before he did, he put his hand on my shoulder.
俺もうついていけねえや。あとは任せた。
He's like, it's all yours, bud. With a sigh of exasperation, he left the hospital room. Leaving me alone like this wasn't fair. Ayase hadn't shown even a hint of interest in Mitsumikun leaving. It was almost like she was pretending he'd never been there in the first place. She was always like this, always so detached from everything. It felt like I was looking at someone fundamentally different from normal people. Like you?
君が生み出したんでしょ。
Ooh.
あの時の花壇。
Oh, that's cool.
それで悟ったの。君はすでに目覚めている。と。
So he's already awakened, even though he doesn't have a sword.
僕はギガロマニアックスじゃないよ。
ギガロ？何？
ギガロマニアックスでしょ。青いセナから聞いた。
ああ。
青いセナ。そう。彼女ね。一度だけ会ったことがあるわ。グラジオールの黒騎士よ。彼女も。
Yeah. Black Knights of Galdiol are Giglamaniacs. Did they mean the same thing?
とにかく僕は違うんだ。リソードだって結局手に入れられなかった。
神罰を乗り越えて、そうすれば剣は召喚される。
Ah, okay.
神罰。
苦しみ、心的負荷の爆発、心の扉の向こう側、あるいは精神的拷問。
Or to mental torture. That's what worked for you.
言い方はいろいろ。
僕、これまでにもたくさん苦しんできたよ。
Even now, I was still suffering. I was the laughingstock of Japan. The police thought I was a murderer. Shogun and Yua were terrorizing me left and right. And everything with Nanami.
私は精神病院にいたわ。子供の頃の話。
Oh, she's gonna talk about that? I already knew. I'd seen it online, but why is she suddenly bringing it up?
そこには5年弱いた。私の心はとても弱くて。だから攻撃した。周囲にあるものすべてを。同時に自分のことも。
Aww. Ayase's voice was a faint murmur. The girl that sat in front of me wearing pastel pajamas and tracing the creases of the sheets with her fingertip showed no signs of the strength she'd once had at the concert. The Ayase, the feds from back then, had she even been real?
私はよく窓ガラスを割っていたの。問題児ね。
I mean, you had good reason to be. A faint smile formed on her lips.
割れたガラスの破片。そこにいつもぼんやりと見えていた。
Ah.
何が？
剣が。でも何年もそれが何なのかわからなかった。ようやくそれがディソードだと知ったのは施設に入って4年ほど経った頃。それまで私は好き放題やっていたけど、ある日施設の職員が一斉に入れ替わって。
Oh.
私は何ヶ月もいろいろな拷問をされて。
That was when they got bought out by the oh gosh, it's like the foundation, whatever the foundation's name was. It was like there's like the cult name that's like the Future Light Society, something like that, or it was like the Nozomi company.
心が壊れてしまう間際に大いなる意志の声が聞こえて。
Oh?
やっと召喚できたのよ。
拷問って。
それが神罰だった。邪神を打ち破る力を手に入れるには純粋なる邪神が必要。
Okay, interesting perspective at least. So basically, she was telling me I needed to suffer more, otherwise I wouldn't ever get a sword. If that was the case, then fetch that. I didn't want to experience any more pain. I'd already been broken down over and over again. I just wanted to be left alone. At my wit's end, I felt the urge to scream and shout. But Ayase's voice didn't allow me to. Alright, moving on. That was interesting. I actually really liked that information that we got there. That was very compelling. Alright, again, we're going to do neutral here.
なんだ、それじゃあ必死にごまかそうとしてたのがバカみたいじゃない。
I don't know if we saw the neutral. I think we did.
剣を見せて。
No. Oh! Yeah, we definitely didn't see this one then. Asked her to show me her sword. No way. Could she really see D swords too? For a split second, that was my assumption, only for it to be immediately proven wrong.
ほら、タクが前に剣のこと話してたでしょ。
Ah.
だから私も見たいなーって。
それでひっぱたかれたのか？意味わからん。岸本って剣の話ばっかしてるのにな。さっきも病室に入った途端、グラディエーターがどうとか言い出して、マジビビったぜ。
Gladiator. Oh wow, that was really quick, really short. Now here's where we see her sword, where Sena attacks us. That voice. Okay, so I think we did see this one, but this is a positive one. I imagine it'd also be at the whose eyes are those eyes? Yeah, it was even worse. All right, and this is the last one. For revenge, we do the neutral. This is on the street where we're supposed to die. We get the neutral. I've done this one before. So, we should have the new ending unlocked. Let's see where we go. Okay. Huh. Alright. So far, it's running straight towards endgame like last time. But it's stopping us here in the train station. So we just rescued Yua, Ayase, and Nanami. And so now this is where we would encounter like Sena and Kozupi. So yeah, I guess things are going to be a little different here. Okay, well, I'm not sure how much it's going to deviate. We'll find out. Maybe it's like 3 lines. Maybe it's going to be an entire scene. Shinsen Station on the Inokashira line was one stop from Shibuya, with it taking only about a minute to arrive there by train. The station itself was situated within the underground tunnel, resulting in only natural light being the only natural light being the beam seeping in from the opening at the end of the platform. Due to the earthquake, all the lights had gone out, enveloping the area in a far thicker darkness than usual. Carrying Orihara Kozua's body on her back, Aoi Sena took one set foot on the platform. There had been no need to buy a ticket. Not a single staff member was present in the vicinity, and none of the ticket machines were in service. Only a glance was necessary to understand how horribly warped the railway tracks had become. There's no wonder the trains had suspended operation a day before. Kozua's breath would turn laborious at times, but she was far from conscious. Dried blood was caked on her forehead. During the earthquake, she had been caught in the wake of a collapsing building, and she had not regained consciousness since. Giglomaniacs are unable to use their powers to heal wounds. To the brain, pain is an inescapable reminder of reality. Thus, Giglomaniacs cannot form any sort of mutual recognition to the effect that I'm not wounded or the injury didn't happen. Human instinct would never allow it. Moreover, one cannot establish mutual recognition with someone who is unconscious. These reasons rendered Sena unable to assist Kozua. Interesting, though. Like, it talks about how, like, you can't heal, but then we have, Taku being able to swap places with, what's the detective? Ban's, like, understudy who turned out to be evil the whole time. Like, it's kind of like healing in that way. Because how did they synchronize so well to be able to pull that off? It's really interesting. Like, they make sure to state this, that you can't just heal somebody because you can't get mutual recognition. But how did they get mutual recognition that their roles were reversed with, like, the staking? Interesting. When they last reached their deserted platform, Sena lowered Kozua from her back and gently laid her against the wall. Sena's expression was stiff. With only a single glance toward Kozua, she shifted her gaze back to the station premises. Glaring motionlessly at a certain point in the distance, she gritted her teeth. At the end of her gaze... Oh. This is different. In the dark recesses of the platform, 2 figures stood shoulder to shoulder. One was a tall man wearing an expensive suit, his whole body exuding an aura of refinement. He had excellent posture, and a relaxed smile rested on his lips. The other was a homeless man clad in filthy rags. His hair was unkempt and shaggy, and his face covered in stubble. The man's head was hung low, rendering his expression difficult to accurately discern. Their appearance contrasted violently, but the 2 men did nothing but stand silently in the dim, empty station platform. Sena felt nothing but raw hatred toward both of them. Norose Genichi and Hatano Issei. Even if she wanted to forget about them, she would never be able to. Interesting. This is really weird that he's here. Like, what is that's really interesting. A long time ago, her mother and her little sister had met the gruesome ends right before her eyes, and the people before her now were the very people who'd killed them. With his head still hung low, the homeless man, Hatano, let out a desolate murmur. Hatano took a fleeting glance at Norose's expression. Norose said nothing, his composed attitude remaining unmoving. Interesting. See, this scene, it was just him, and he did say the blame. He's like, yeah, I should have done more. In this one, he's pointing out that guy, but that guy, is he actually here? It doesn't seem like, I feel like he would be saying some evil, like, maniacal, like, muhaha monologue if he were actually here. Sena's repugnance billowed as she listened to his words of repentance.
母さんと妹を見殺しにした。それが厳然とした事実だ。悔いているなら、どうして逃げた？
世界を守るためだ。
でたらめを。
親に逆らうのは感心しませんね。
Why do you care? It was the first time Norose had spoken.
確かに君の家族が悲劇的な結末を迎えたのは私が指示した結果です。もう十分データは取れていたのでね。実に有意義な実験でした。
Uh-huh.
有意義。
Sena swiftly rebooted her D sword and held it in her hand. The resulting shockwave stirred her long black hair.
この男を殺せセナ。こいつが元凶だ。
言われなくても。
She had already kicked powerfully off the platform. Without brandishing her sword, she closed the distance with a phenomenal display of her explosive power. Her target, Norose Genichi. It's not going to be that easy. She mowed him down with her D-sword. Even the air was torn to shreds. Norose's head tore free and flew away from its source. Sena followed it with her eyes when suddenly, Norose's flying head distorted mid-flight and transformed into that of her father's. Oh, well, that explains it. Stunned, she looked at the headless body that stood before her. It had been wearing a suit only a moment ago, but now it donned the clothes of a homeless man, devoid of now of any and all power, tumbled backward lifelessly. Fetch me. It's kind of the same ending in a way. Oh no, last time, like, he threw himself in front of her and saved her. Now she just killed him. Eyes wide as could be, Sena looked at Hatano, who had been standing just beside it. He turned to face her in return, his bearded face warped into a vicious sneer, his face contorted into a mosaic had been affixed to it, his body contorted in a similar fashion. Oh, man. The very next instant, Hatano took on the face of the man Sena did not recognize. His age, his face, his aura, they were all differed greatly from her father's. Sena was overwhelmed with confusion. She took another unblinking look at the head she had just severed. After tracing an arc that, as it flew, it splattered blood upon where it struck the concrete. It was her father's face, her father's head. Sena could not look away. An illusion made by a delusion. Realizing that, Sena's breathing grew shallow and ragged.
Sena-chan sa.
The man who was supposed to be her father, the man who was now a completely different person, spoke Sena's name in a far too friendly way.
君が今やったことって結局お父さんと同じっすよね。
Oh, you suck. It was the result she had longed for all throughout these past 6 months. It should have been. It should have been, and yet Sena was assailed by a fierce inner turmoil. Her father, who had been reduced to just a head, had his eyes trained directly on Sena.
父親の首跳ねて殺すってえぐいな。
Still not comprehending why she was experiencing such psychological shock, Sena heard something tear deep inside her ears. I heard a voice. The scream of Sena's mind, a scream which cursed reality, a scream that emulated madness. I followed that cry all the way to Shinsen Station. By the time I got there, it was already too late. When I set foot onto the dim platform, the faint smell of blood hung in the air, Kozupi lying against the wall unconscious. And there on the platform was Sena, sunk to the ground with her back facing me. Her head was pointed down, her long hair was covering her face, and I couldn't see her expression. Right beside her was a headless body. It then occurred to me that the round object lying a few meters away was the head that had once been attached to it. It was Hatano-san. The moment I realized that, it bit my lip hard.
こいつはラッキーっすね。
A man who was standing on the tracks. Contrasting heavily with the suit he was wearing, he had a rucksack on his back, and a harsh mechanical noise was emanating from it. Suwa Mamoru, a detective from Metropolitan Police Department's Investigation Division. This wasn't the first time I'd run into him, and I knew exactly what he'd done.
もともとは目障りな畑の親子を処分しに来たんすけどね。西条くん、君が自分から火に飛び込んできてくれて感謝感激っす。 君を見かけたら捕まえろってことになってるんすよ。
誰に？
内緒っす。
He smiled a flippant smile, one that was somewhat reminiscent of Detective Band's. Don't bring him up here. But there was one key difference. Detective Band's smile had always been just an act meant to throw people off and rile them up. When it came to Suwa, however, the sly smile was who he truly was.
あんたはノロセの居場所を知ってる？
西条くんさ。
Suwa heaved a sigh as he shook his head in an exaggerated manner.
口の聞き方に気をつけてほしいっすね。
No.
自分の方が年上っすよ。
You don't deserve any respect. With my eyes still trained on Suwa, I cautiously jumped down from the platform and onto the tracks. Sena was still motionless, so I ended up effectively shielding her back.
アンっていう人を殺したのはあんただ。
Oh, this is where he figures that out. Interesting.
刑事のくせに人を殺すなんて。
君には言われたくないっす。
I gripped my D sword tightly.
あんたみたいなやつに敬語を使う義理なんてないよ。
あのさ、お前に言われたくねえって言ってるんだよ。
Even from this distance, it was clear to see the smile on Sua's face had disappeared.
お前も人殺しだろ。違うとは言わせないぞ。お前は葉月志乃を殺した。
Hazuki Shino. Oh, right. We did kill her, and she was your girlfriend. Oh. Oh, yeah, that I can see why you'd be pissed, actually.
俺は今すぐにでもお前をぶち殺したいんだよ。
Hazuki Shino, the nurse who had been the real NewGen culprit. She and Suwa were both disciples of the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light. Was that all? I gulped audibly.
信仰の救いのためにそれは自制するが、その代わり俺が責任持って心を殺してやる。
No, lovely. I attempted to brandish my D sword, but it was obvious that I wouldn't be able to do anything. It was just a reflex, and just like I expected, I wasn't able to do anything at all. In the illusion time. Now, I think this sequence is probably going to be very similar. Oh. I found myself in a dimly lit room. In the room was a single man talking to another much older man through a large screen.
諏訪君、君と葉月君にやってもらいたい修行があるのだ。
Interesting.
はい、何なりと。
人を殺してもらいたい。
相手は誰ですか？
相手が何者かに意味はない。
と申しますと？
特に決まりはないと言っておこう。殺す対象、殺し方はこちらで指示する。
Okay.
我らが進めているプロジェクトノアを完成させるため、西条匠という少年に心理的揺さぶりをかける必要があるのだ。
Uh-huh.
揺さぶりですか？
恐怖を与えるのだ。しかしその少年の秘めた力は強大だ。直接的な行動はこちらの身に危険を及ぼしかねん。
Interesting. Oh, there's so much more stuff we're talking about here.
故に連続猟奇殺人事件を起こす。
たったそれだけのために殺人を。
不満かね？
シノもその修行に参加しなければなりませんか？
当然だ。これは信仰の理想郷を築くためであり、同時に君たちに信仰の救いをもたらすだろう。
So it was this old man.
時に葉月君はお腹に君の子を授かっていたな。予定日はいつかね？
あと2ヶ月ほどです。
その子供、信仰の救いのために捧げたまえ。
Oh my gosh. That's so insane.
殺せとおっしゃいますか？
聖なる犠牲だよ。子を捧げれば 君と葉月くんには大いなる信仰の救いがもたらされるだろう。
大いなる信仰の救い。
Holy crap. This is a super cult. That's super scary. Jeez.
かしこまりました。すべて教祖様の仰せのままに。きっとシノも喜びます。信仰の救いあれ。
Dang. Holy crap. Suddenly, an insanely powerful wind blew against me. It pushed me backward hard, nearly knocking me over. I tried desperately to brace myself against it. However, my body didn't do what I asked. Instead, my body curled up in a ball on the spot. My body wouldn't listen to me. It moved by itself. It was like my body wasn't my own. Before I knew it, my surroundings had gone completely dark. When I looked below, I saw the nightscape spreading out before me. If I didn't know any better, I could have easily mistaken all the lights in the sky as a sky full of stars. Suddenly I realized that I was standing somewhere ridiculously high up. Beside me were 4 men and women I'd never met. No, I knew one of them. Yua, for some reason, though. She wasn't wearing her glasses. No, that wasn't Yua. It was Mia, Yua's younger twin sister, the one who should have died a month ago. Which meant this was... yeah, the roof of the Cornelius Tower. My body wasn't my own. I was wearing a school uniform I didn't recognize. Even the body type was brawnier than my own. And when I saw that, there were 4 other people huddled together on the ground, wailing loudly as tears poured down their faces. Let me guess what exactly was happening. This body that my consciousness had invaded belonged to one of the 5 victims who had died in the first NewGen case, the group dive. Through no will of my own, my field of vision, ever so slowly, panned over toward the helipad. Shogun had filmed the video, so he should have been here somewhere. There, Shogun was wearing a Darth Spider helmet on his head and a black cloak draped over his body. When Shogun had cornered me at O-Front, he'd been wearing something similar. But was this guy actually Shogun? No. His legs were slightly peeking out from his black cloak. He was very clearly wearing slacks. In addition to his legs were thick, like those of a healthy adult male's. They weren't the skinny, pathetic legs that belonged to Shogun, to Nishijo Takumi. No bones protruded from them. And when I looked closer, I realized that even his sitting height was completely different. The cloak kept him hidden, but his shoulders also looked fairly broad. At the very least, the man wasn't Nishijo Takumi. He wasn't carrying a video camera. Suddenly, from the darkness spreading out behind the fake Shogun, I heard footsteps, dragging footsteps. And not just one set of them. It wasn't a hallucination. The strange footsteps belonged to many, many people. There had to be several dozen unknown entities lurking in the darkness. Sounds really weird. Ugh. The footsteps hadn't been in the video that had been uploaded to YouTube. Not to mention, there shouldn't have been any way for this many people to have gained the access to this helipad. Also, by the way, like, I think I mentioned it a long time ago, but it's really ironic that instead of YouTube, they went with MewTube, which at the time would not have meant what it means now. Then what the heck was the sound? The 4 others beside me continued to wail in grief, though through no will of my own, my body similarly let out a cry and they began to tremble. Oh, what the fetch. Something was coming closer. If I was a low-budget horror movie, these dragging footsteps would have been zombies. Zombies with both arms hanging down limply from in front of them. Their decaying bodies slowly swaying as they walked. But that was just in the movies. In reality, especially the 21st century Tokyo, there was no way a horde of zombies could possibly just show up like that. But if that were the case, then what were they? My heart felt like it was going to seize up in terror. I wanted to look away. But the owner of the body I had invaded refused to do so. Finally, the unknown entities began to emerge from the darkness. They choked all remaining space on the helipad, sealing off our escape route. I wasn't sure if I was right to call them anticlimactic, but the ones who appeared were perfectly normal people. They wore suits, school uniforms, parkas, and they were different ages and sexes. But they were still all people you'd expect to find walking around Shibuya at night. Save for one thing. Every one of the nearly 100 people there was gripping some sort of bladed object. None of them said a word, not even tried to. All that could be heard was the raspy, nasal breaths pooling together in an abysmal cacophony. For some reason, I couldn't see their expressions very well. It was like their faces were made of paint that had been blurred by water. Their faces were blurry and disfigured. Were their faces actually deformed? Or was my sight itself the problem? I didn't know. They were sluggish, yet steady, coming toward us. They were like robots that had been programmed with a single mission. I thought that perhaps the fake Shogun was ordering them around. But that didn't seem to be the case. Every once in a while, he would move his wheelchair forward slightly, only to freeze once again, not move a single inch beyond that. The 5 people had all been cornered, and now they had nowhere to run. In order to escape from the 180-meter-high rooftop, they had no choice but to dive. Gasping the blades, the mob grew closer. Closer and closer, little by little. Eventually, they were within reaching distance. And yet, even as in the final moments, they all stayed completely silent. As well as this, they all drew nearer and nearer. They didn't make any attempt to jump on any of the victims. But this strange behavior only served to make them all the more terrifying. Terrifying enough to make me think, I need to get out of here, even if it means I have to jump.
その目、誰の目?
Whose eyes are those eyes? I heard an unexpected voice. The voice of a real shogun, Nishijo Takumi. However, I hadn't heard it from the man wearing the Darth Spider helmet, but from overhead. And it seemed like I hadn't been the only one to hear it. As if they rehearsed it, the 5 cornered people all stood up, joined hands with one another, and looked up at the night sky. Naturally, only the starry sky spread above us across the night. Shogun was nowhere to be found. Mind reading.
その目、誰の目?
My field of vision slowly panned, and then I saw something strange. Even though the nightscape should have been the only thing spreading out below me, I saw a lone flight of stairs stretching out downward. It led right to the roof of the adjacent building, no, not Science City, which was across the Metropolitan Highway, but the building nestled up close to the Cornelius Tower. A building nestled close to Cornelius Tower. A fact that didn't make any sense because no such building existed in reality. Even so, the 5 people held no suspicion that the staircase was delusionary at all. They thought about how all they thought about was how they were saved by it. That's what it was. These thoughts, these emotions were conveyed distinctively to me, and then with only them in mind, they stepped forward. Hand in hand. They had yet to let go even once. It was exactly how the group dive had ended. None of them had possessed any desire to dive. So when the staircase they had been so convinced was real disappeared, the feeling of empty air deeply shocked them. And they fell. They screamed from the deepest parts of their bodies, falling, with pressured violence assaulting my body. The shrieks of the girl next to me emulated howls of the most terrifying beast. She clutched my hand so tightly. I heard nails dug into my flesh. The time it took for us to fall those 180 meters felt like an eternity. The dark earth rushed toward us with incredible speed. Our surroundings were so dark. I started hallucinating about the fall into a never-ending abyss, one that endlessly sucked me down deeper and deeper. And then the bodies of 5 people collided with the earth. With a sickening crunch, they were pulverized. The pain struck without me expecting it, a single blow that led straight to death. The impact felt like my entire body had exploded and then been ground to a fine powder from the inside out. Felt the sensation of my heart violently contracting from the shock. And then my consciousness was severed. My eyes were forced open and a new scene burst forth in front of me. I was walking down Tamagawa Dori. My body was completely intact. Yet the sensation of crashing into the ground remained distinct. Through no will of my own, I was walking down the street as if it were the other day. Are we going to be watching all the NewGen murders happen one by one by one? God, that might take a while. I might have to break this up into 2 parts because it's already actually, like, we've already been here for a while. This body was more in shape than my own. It wasn't me. I had a terrible feeling about this. Suddenly, I noticed a strange man walking toward me, and when I saw him, I was forced to acknowledge that my terrible feeling had been warranted. The man passed me. He was wearing a fairly normal suit, but on his head had a Darth Spider helmet. It was all too surreal. There wasn't anyone else around. I wanted to run away as soon as possible. And yet, despite my wishes, the owner of the body my consciousness had invaded looked over their shoulder at the man who they had just passed. Darth Spider was right behind me. He was so close I could almost feel his breath. And then, bursting out from behind my blind spot, his fist flew straight into my stomach. All the strength left my body, my vision went black. Not long after I lost consciousness, I began to feel an intense searing pain spreading throughout my abdomen. Right. When I opened my eyes, I was in an operating room. Wearing only white scrubs, Hazuki Suna was standing in front of me. Her scrubs were wide open, revealing her bloodied abdomen. Even though her face was sickly pale, she looked at me with a gentle smile. In her hand was a scalpel she slowly laid against my stomach. She applied some pressure, and with a slight ripping sound, a small incision appeared on my skin. Blood spurted from the wound, dancing throughout the air right before landing on Hazuki Shino's face, and yet despite that, the same bright smile stayed plastered on her face. I watched in horror and pain as she slowly sliced me open. I had seen this scene once before, back when I read Hazuki's memory. The Manchild case. The pain in my stomach was becoming unbearable. Screaming and sobbing, I tried to escape somehow by thrashing around, but my limbs were all fastened to the bed. I was unable to move. Any movement would lead to the pain in my abdomen growing far more intense.
信仰の救いをあなたに
With her hand resting upon my cleanly sliced open skin, Hazuki began poking around in the gushing wound with her fingers. That alone pierced me with enough agony to shatter my mind. I could very clearly feel the sensation of her fingers writhing around inside me. Oh, could you imagine? And then, just as I'd seen in her memories, Hazuki forcefully widened the wound from both sides. The sensation of skin and flesh tearing. The lack of anesthesia let the pain raw and unfiltered, causing me, along with the owner of the body, to lose consciousness, only to be woken up immediately after by an overwhelming pain. But Hazuki kept forcibly widening the wound all the same. The details no longer mattered to me, such as where it hurt, or where specifically on my body the pain was erupting from. I hallucinated all my nerve endings being pierced with searing hot needles. I passed out again, but I couldn't escape. The pain mercilessly forced my consciousness back awake. I left my body writhe in pain. I found myself thinking that if it would release me from the suffering, I'd be willing to bite my tongue off, but just as I thought that, I saw something. There, in Hazuki's hand, was a blood-soaked fetus. Something that served only to make her smile all the more revolting. This woman was well and truly insane. She took the corpse of the fetus she had removed from her own body and then, God, it's so disturbing, plunged it deep inside my abdomen. Her hand and the fetus she was gripping tightly in it shoved inside my organs, gouged out my flesh, and gnawed deeper and deeper into me. I began to vomit blood, but even though it threatened to suffocate me, gargling screams rose from my drowning throat without end. Perhaps due to the pain overloading my brain, my head felt strangely foggy. And yet, despite the fogginess, the pain refused to get any more bearable, and I began to comprehend less and less of what was happening. Pain was all that ruled my mind. Hazuki then withdrew her hand from my stomach and nodded in satisfaction. Then, as if attending to a patient, she spoke a few soft words.
よく我慢できましたね
But the very second she finished speaking, she suddenly lost consciousness and her body collapsed to the floor. At around the same time, someone else entered the operating room. The sound of his shoes reverberated throughout it. But I had no interest in whoever it was. The sole thing I focused on was continuing my bawling and screaming until unable to feel anything but agony. Seeing the unnatural expansion of my stomach, I felt into a panic. Along with the pain, I began to feel an itchiness. It was itchy, really, really itchy. I wanted to scratch it, but my hands were tied to the bed, so I couldn't. Suddenly, a shadow obstructed my view. It was Darth Spider, appearing from almost nowhere. He picked up Hazuki in his arms, exited the operating room with her. Then came back alone a few moments later. He was carrying a sewing needle and some nylon thread. What was he thinking? I didn't know until he slowly began stitching together the wound on my stomach. The pain was practically nothing. compared to the pain of having a foreign object shoved inside me, nor the agony of having my flesh ripped open. Darth Spider's sewing was so incredibly sloppy. Even the grade schooler could have done better. Every time he pulled at the finishing line, it chafed against the chasm he'd opened in my skin. The itchiness grew more intense. An unbearable itchiness. An itchiness that seemed to well up from deep inside me. Anyone else feeling uncomfortable? Itchy, itchy, itchy. I want to scratch it. I want to go away. If he'd just let me, I wouldn't even mind if I died. The tingling itch combined with the pain. And yet, even more than the pain, the itch threatened to drive me completely insane. Oh boy. Alright, let's do one more. I think we're going to go through all of them, but let's do one more. I think this is going to be the Cruc-affiction one. Due to my mental state, it took me a while to notice the scenery had changed once again. I felt a slight relief from the pain and the itchiness, but the sensation hadn't completely disappeared. Even now, I stumbled through Shinsen. I felt an itch in the center of my body, but along with that itch, I felt the sensation of a foreign object in my abdomen, as well as the pain of a needle weaving in and out of my body. They all remained as distinct, lingering discomforts continuing to torment my mind even now. I was on an unlit, rarely used road. As I walked down it, I saw a figure coming toward me. The road was so narrow we would have had to turn sideways in order to even pass each other. But when I saw what the figure looked like, my body turned to ice. Yet again, it was a man dressed as Darth Spider. We passed each other. Darth Spider didn't give any kind of reaction. My heart was beating out of my chest, and then something surfaced in my mind, an incredibly compulsive urge, one that made no sense for me to feel. A crusty old fetch had been hitting on my girl. Pissed me off like you wouldn't believe. I wanted to kill him. That extremely abrupt feeling drove me forward. That face of my girl was foggy in my memories. I couldn't remember her very well, to the point where I wasn't sure if she even existed in the first place. And yet, the crusty old fetch had been hitting on my girl was crystal clear in my mind. I had seen his face before. He was the victim of the Cruc-affiction case. My memory lurched forward, placing me in a dark, narrow alley. An alley I knew all too well, the scene from the Cruc-affiction. And right in front of me was the victim of that case. He was a middle-aged man, and my hands were wrapped tightly around his neck. His body convulsed violently, bubbles frothing from his mouth, his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Upon learning what it felt like to have someone's life disappear in my hands, I went slightly cold. Eventually, the man stopped moving. When Komeda, the perpetrator of this case, confirmed he was dead, I released my hands from his neck and let him collapse to the ground. I gave him a single parting kick to the side, then immediately went to leave. Oh, that sounded horrible. I heard a voice, and when I turned around, the man who was supposed to be dead was getting up. Eyes still rolled into the back of his head. Then he reached for me. With a yelp, I punched him, knocking him to the ground. But even though his movements were sluggish, he kept getting back up, no matter how many times I hit him. I grabbed his neck again. Just as I'd done earlier, but this time with even more force. I wrung my hands tightly around his neck. Put all the strength I had into my grip, applying enough pressure to snap the bones in his neck. He soon stopped moving again. This time, I put my ear up to his mouth, and once I made absolutely sure he wasn't breathing, I let him drop. I watched his body for a while. And then somehow, the man who should have died twitched violently and began to rise back to his feet. The expression on his face was one clearly fitting of a dead man's. Didn't change even the slightest as he moved. Raising up from the ground, he started coming toward me. As I stumbled back in fear, I stepped on something. Startled, I looked down at my feet. A large number of cross-shaped stakes were scattered across the street. I had to stop him from moving anymore. I had to drive a stake into the monster I was facing. If I didn't, I'd be screwed. Overwhelmed by the impending danger, I shoved the man against the wall before he could finish getting up. I picked up a stake. And before I knew it, I was gripping the hammer in my other hand. Once again, I found myself in an operating room, but it wasn't the Manchild case again. Despite knowing that, the pain from that experience, coupled with the sensation of the foreign object in my stomach, continued to torture me as it ground away each of my every nerve ending. I could see two figures in my field of vision. They were both still as could be, staring in my direction with bated breath. One of them was Darth Spider, and the other was Hazuki Shino. Her scrubs weren't soaked in blood this time, which was what led me to believe this was a different case than the Manchild one. I was lying in a bed. A needle for an IV was embedded in my arm. However, nothing was being injected into me. The liquid the tube was flowing backward, and the liquid was blood. My blood. The blood that circulated within this body was being sucked out through the IV. At the end of the tube, there was only an extremely dirty bucket. It was filled to the brim with blood. The blood continued to fall into the bucket. Drip, drip, drip. My head felt fuzzy. I was incredibly dizzy. I was assailed by an intensely peculiar sensation, one with a pleasant feeling, like my consciousness was floating far away. Intermixed with the pain and itchiness left over from the Manchild case, then as if showing off to me, Darth Spider and Hazuki tenderly embraced each other like lovers. The two supported one another. Hazuki's face couldn't have looked happier. I couldn't understand how she could make a face like that, while in the middle of creating dried-up corpse in the Vambuyer case. But before I could think about it, why I couldn't understand it, the pain grew far more intense. My throat sapped of all moisture. My vision gradually darkened, and my consciousness slowly grew thinner and thinner, until eventually it evaporated completely. Okay. Fetch me. Oh, it took you this long to realize? Then I realized this was a vicarious experience? I was being forced to experience a series of NewGen murders vicariously. I was facing the pain of each case, the fear, one by one. If that was true, then there were still 3 remaining. Realizing that, my desire pulled me down even deeper.
Sensei.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna go ahead and stop here, because it's been a while, and I have a feeling that even when we finish all this, we have to confront Suwa, we have to see the ending there. So I feel like there's another good part that we will probably have the like more to explore. This is like a whole different ending, so that's a good place to end. But yeah, so it's interesting. So like in this path, it looks like Suwa was Suwa orchestrated the murders not just to be like to cause terror en masse in general, but to specifically try and walk Takumi through them, which is really, really interesting. So I wonder what the end all for it is supposed to be. I don't see it being a good ending, but at the same time, I wonder what it's going to result in. Are we actually going to confront the Noah too, or are we going to be stopped by whatever this is? So interesting. It's also really interesting that what kind of allowed for this to occur was that Sena didn't kill her father, that her father saved her, and then she, I think, destroyed the device that he had. Or maybe she didn't. I can't remember exactly if Suwa had a device that time that we saw or not. But yeah, this is interesting. Very curious to see how this all plays out. But yeah, we will stop here just because I don't have the means to go much further right now. I also kind of want a break. But yeah, I feel like we'll get to this new ending finally when this is all said and done. Very interesting to see. For one reason, one part that really caught my attention specifically was that the people who were on the rooftop, right? Why did they hear the real Takumi say, "Whose eyes are those eyes?" Like, why would he reach out and contact them like that? Was he trying to save them? Was he somehow bringing about the events? Like, why would he get involved? Because that just seems odd to me, right? I don't know. We'll have to see. I wonder if there's any explanations, because this game so far has done nothing but leave lots of questions. Not in a bad way per se. It answers the most important questions, but there's still a lot of mysteries that are left on the table. I don't know if that's intentional. I guess it must be intentional because it's written that way. But like, I'm not sure if like, are we gonna get more answers in the sequel, which is Chaos Child, I believe. Like, does that explain a lot more about like how this stuff worked, or like what the ultimate goal was, or is it just left for us to kind of contemplate? Because I guess either way works, but still. All right, but that's enough for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Well, I mean, I wouldn't call this an enjoyable experience, but I hope that you don't mind participating in this, and hope you don't mind waiting till next week for the next half, or the rest of the ending of this episode and the series, and then we'll jump into the actual endings of the other games, of the other paths. So that'll be fun. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you don't mind, and I'm really grateful for your support, especially the patrons and members. You're all amazing. I'm not grateful. I'm not grateful. I'm super grateful. I'm not worthy of that support. It means a lot to me, especially because, you know, like I predicted, taking a long break for a vacation on YouTube doesn't like that very much. It has severely punished me in the algorithm, but, you know, it is what it is. I'm going to just keep posting, and hopefully the people who are interested in watching my content will keep coming back, and we'll be able to, you know, keep finding the videos again. I'm really grateful for each of you. Thank you so much. And until the next video you're watching me, I will see me in next. I'll see you there.